I'm so happy to be here and to be talking to you about burnout today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jane Frankland. I am an award-winning entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and a women's change agent. I've worked in cybersecurity for over 24 years. It's going to be 25 years in November. It's ages. It feels like forever. It's certainly a lifetime. I've worked mostly with my own business. So I came into cybersecurity when I first built my own global penetration testing company. And then I've also done some executive roles with companies like, say, Accenture. That was the last managing director position I worked for another company, but most of my career has been as an entrepreneur. I have also contributed to forums and accreditation companies. I work as a judge internationally in cybersecurity and technology and also literacy. And some of those awards are for children, for teens, and some of them are for adults and businesses. And I'm often featured in the press quite a bit. So all of the broadsheets in the UK. So the Times, the BBC, and many others. And I also do a lot of work when it comes to women. So I work with women and businesses who value them. And I am all about making a difference really for the planet. So I believe the world will only be happier, safer, and more prosperous when we get more women into male-dominated industries like cybersecurity. So that's the work that I do. And I as part of that, I have a women's scholarship, which I offer throughout the year, and I've enabled 352 women to participate in my scholarships, and that's a value of over $500,000 US. So that's who I am, and I'm really excited to be talking to you about burnout. So I'm going to share my screen now with you and get it up and running. So let's start from the very beginning. So this is a workshop about really how you can beat burnout and the hidden cost of working in cybersecurity. Now, I want to start off with this quote from Alvin Toffler because I feel it's so relevant. The other day I was speaking at a conference and I was talking about him because about 30 years ago in the 1970s, that's two workplace decades ago, he wrote this groundbreaking landmark book called Future Shock. And he said that really he defined future shock as being it's individuals and society's reaction to too much change too quickly. And I think it's really relevant because of where we are now with the situation, because we've just gone through the global pandemic. We're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with hybrid and remote workplaces. And there's just been so much change. Interestingly, I'll go on to my next slide, actually, because interestingly, the World Economic Forum has said that by the end of this year, we will have 75 million robots displacing humans, their jobs. So we are automating, technology is becoming automated so much faster than we actually anticipated. And even though all of those jobs are going to be displaced, this year we expect to have, I think it's 133 million new jobs created. And so we're in this state of constant rapid change. And it means that over half the world's population is actually going to need to reskill and upskill really, really quickly. So we're dealing with all of this. And interestingly, coming back to Alvin Toffler, who was a futurist, he was a businessman, and he wrote this amazing book with his wife, Adelaide, all those years ago. And he looked at how agrarian societies were moving through to industrial societies and then super industrial societies, and all of the change that went on and how they were coping with this massive rapid change and what was happening. And what he said was that people would experience overwhelm and shattering stress. So it would be very, very difficult. And I think this is really interesting because of where we are. If we look at the situation when it comes to cybersecurity, we're having attacks are increasing. We know that, and they have been since really this industry, this field begun. So over the last 2 decades, we've had 1,517% increase in the number of cyber attacks and data breaches. 2 decades ago, we had about 97 victims per hour in terms of those attacks. Nowadays we do. 2 decades ago, we had 6 victims per hour. So that's just how the extent of what is happening, how much this industry is changing, and how much is being thrown at us. So I'm going to be speaking to you about all of these things. What I'm going to be looking at is the burnout situation for women, what burnout is and how to recognize it. What is the cost of burnout for companies and also personally for individuals, and how you can overcome burnout and achieve a healthy work-life balance. And I'm going to be going through a few tripwires that you need to watch out for as well. Okay, so cybersecurity is a pressurized environment. I don't need to labor this point because you're working in it. I'm just going to say it is at odds with the business most of the time, because guess what? We see risk absolutely everywhere. We start twitching when we see risk. We don't like change because it just introduces more risk to us. And we're accountable for it. Certainly if we're leading teams, that's our job. If we're part of the ecosystem, that's our job. So we're accountable for it, and it's really high pressure. And usually we're at odds with other business stakeholders. And we have this whole thing of where we're seeing security, we see it as best practice, but often, and I think more so, it's becoming more compliance driven. And that's not what we want. We want best practice first and then compliance straight after. So we do want both, but the driver is changing. Usually in cybersecurity, we are struggling with departments that are pretty much under-resourced. So certainly if we're leading teams, we've got small teams, unless we're working in a financial institution, and then they can be very large. We're usually struggling with inadequate budgets. We've got blocks. We're known as the department that likes to say no. And a lot of the time, our leaders, our chief information security officers or chief security officers aren't staying in the organization very long. So there can be a churn, not with our leaders. So strategies can change, implementation policies can change, and all of that. And we're having to cope with all of those things. And then we can have a rub sometimes with other parts of the business, specifically IT. So there can be a conflict of interest with the CIO or for IT budgets and so on. And then we have this pressure with salary levels, and maybe us not being able to increase salaries. And if we can't increase salaries in line with what the market is saying is happening and what we need to do, then we're going to lose staff. So we can have a constant churn of staff. So our team members can be leaving, and there can be pressure on us to seek work elsewhere. So that's all going on for us. But in terms of the culture, this is what I also see. So I often talk about something called high challenge and high support. And you can see here this circle here with various segments in it. And I'm going to start off with the kind of sandy color here, this gold color. It's actually representing sand because that's my brand's colors. But in this area, you have low support. So a culture where you have maybe a leader who isn't actually bothering so much about you. So you show up to work, you don't know if you're doing a good job or not. You're not getting any feedback. And as a result, you just turn up, and these cultures, these environments can be really apathetic. So a place where you're going to get low achievement and development. So teams where if you are asking them to do anything because they're in a culture like this, then they can feel put upon, like, how dare you ask me? Come on. Up here, just above it, in this kind of turquoise, sea-colored segment, then you've got an area of comfort. So here you've got high support and low challenge. So here you might have an environment where you're not really being stretched that much, but you've got a lot of support, and that support could be financial, and it could also be emotional as well. And because of that, because the support and the challenge aren't equal, aren't handed over or in an equal dose, then you can become very resistant to change and very comfortable in your ways. So if you are being asked to do something, it's not necessarily standard. That's unusual for you. So there can be a lot of resistance and a lot of stagnation and a lot of dependency on leaders. So if you're in a team like this, you'll recognize what I'm saying. If you're leading it, then you might be thinking, oh, maybe I'm giving too much support, and that's not the right thing to do. If you look down here in the coral segment that is slightly pulled out, this is an area really where you're going to see a lot of stress and burnout. And here you have cultures of fear, manipulation. You've got office politics playing out. They are typically very siloed. There are cultures of blame in them, lots of criticism, lots of judgment. You are thrown in at the deep end. You're usually being asked to make of this job what you want, but you're not getting the support. So in these environments, I see these so often in cyber. You've got high challenge with all of these attacks and these incidents coming at you, but you may be just left to it, and you're left there to struggle. And in these environments, what I see is a lot of stress, unnecessary stress, and a lot of burnout. And they're almost like sink or swim environments, whereby some people do really well in these environments and they thrive in them. But typically, if that is happening, they're not learning good management practices. They're not becoming really effective, consistent leaders. And obviously, if these environments don't work out for you, then you're going to leave. You're going to be incredibly stressed, unfulfilled, and you might go off sick, and you might also leave. So there are much higher incidents of those things happening. And if you look up here at the top with this dark blue, in this dark blue area, this is where you really want to be. So you want to work in an environment like this, and you want to be leading an environment. You want to be leading teams in an environment like this. And this is where you get consistency. So you've got high support, where you are stretching your team members or being stretched yourself if you're in them, and you're also being supported, and they have to be in equal doses, because then when that happens, you're getting teams who are really good with change. They are self-directing. They are fantastic ambassadors because they go out and they tell the world just how amazing a leader you are, or what an amazing place this is to work. So you get that great flow of talent and new team members coming to join you. So that's where you get the consistency, and you have those cultures of empowerment and innovation and opportunity and partnerships and collaboration and all the wonderful things that come from it. The psychological safety, that's where you find it, and that's where you want to be aiming for, so that you don't have burnout, team members who are leaving ahead of time. Okay, so let's look at what's happening when it comes to women in security. Here you can see that we still have really low numbers of women in the industry, and that we're not really moving the needle in terms of those numbers. There's not that much data that is being produced on this. It is actually very limited. And IC Squared they've been very good actually over the last few years at producing a great report. But what they've done is, more recently, in the last probably, I want to say, like 4 years, it might be 5 years, it could be less than that, but I want to say the last two workplace reports that they've done, work study reports that they've done, they changed the way that they are accounting for the percentages of women in the industry. So they're looking at women who perform security roles, as opposed to might have a security title or might be in a cybersecurity or information security department. So it's changed slightly, but nonetheless, with the reports that we have, wherever those are being performed, whether they are performed in the UK or in the US or wherever, we can work on the basis, I would work on the basis that we've got between 25% to probably about 18% of women performing cybersecurity or information security roles. And we're not doing a great job of increasing that number. We've got more women leaving the industry, and the women who are particularly at risk are those who are under 35 years old. So we have women exiting the industry. We might have women coming into the industry quite late as a second job. So maybe that's in their late 20s or early 30s, and then they're not staying because they're just finding problems. And some of those problems could be to do with the culture that we have in cybersecurity, or it could be for issues like burnout, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But here we've got low numbers. We've got low numbers of women moving into leadership, and we've got a lot of women exiting the industry. So it's not great, and we can do a better job of that. Now, typically when women are in a male-dominated industry, this isn't research that's been done in cyber. It was done by Catalyst. But women are usually told to build their careers like men. It's like, do all of these things. So actively seek high-profile assignments, rub shoulders with influential leaders, communicate openly and directly about their career aspirations, seek visibility for their accomplishments, let their lead or their manager or line manager know of their skills and their willingness. Written rules of the company and to ask for help when they need it. All of those things women are being asked to do. However, when women build their careers like men, they do worse. So we have to, because of the judgments that are placed upon us, because we don't have parity in cybersecurity in these environments yet, we're being judged in a different manner. So we have got so much to watch out for. What else happens when it comes to women? Well, we're told to comply. We're told not to make a fuss. We're told to keep quiet. We're told to be respectful. We're told to be grateful. We're told to look after everybody else and not us. All of these things are typically on account of the way that we have been raised as women. We're penalized for not behaving in accordance with our gender. It can look like this. We can, let me just say, oh, actually it's not showing. Let me just go back. Often what can happen, this image here reminds me very much of one of my friend's daughters. And what happens, her day and her week and her months are very much looking like this. So she's sitting down with her manager, and unbeknown to him, she's working from 7 o'clock in the morning all the way through to 11 o'clock in the evening. And that's largely happening at the weekends. So she's studying for an exam, a really important exam, and she's working really, really hard. And she believes that she's not working hard enough. She's being given lots of work by her manager, and she believes that she can't cope, that she's a failure. Or everybody else, she's comparing herself to everybody else, and they're all doing really well, and she's struggling and she can't get through the workload. Whereas he's looking at her and thinking, wow, you're pretty amazing. I'm giving you all of this work and you're just like getting through it. So the whole point of this is that it's really to illustrate the self-fulfilling prophecy that our actions towards others impact our beliefs about others, which cause other actions towards us which reinforce our beliefs about ourselves or which influence our actions towards others. And that just kind of repeats. So that cycle continues until there isn't an intervention, until something happens. And it could be that she burns out, or she becomes sick, or he realizes that something isn't going right, that maybe her work is deteriorating, or maybe she leaves. So there has to be an intervention, and this way of working is not healthy at all. Okay, so when we look at top performers, we have the rules of the game in business are not the same for women as they are for men. And often because of our the way that we've been raised and everything like that, we can really struggle with how to cope in industry. And I want to bring this up because it is a little bit tied into the imposter syndrome, because burnout can be tied into the imposter syndrome. And it's really important to really understand your personality types. So I'm going to read these out to you, and I really want you to think about these and score yourself on a grade of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. So this is most like you, in other words. So I've got 5 personality types here. Personality type 1 is the perfectionist. So the perfectionist will set extremely high expectations for herself, and even if she meets 99% of her goals, she's going to feel like a failure. Any small mistake will make her question her own competence. So just think about, is that you? Is it most like you, a little bit like you, or not very like you? Score it in between 1 to 10. The expert is the next one. So the expert will feel the need to be qualified, certified, or trained to improve her skills. Alternatively, she'll need to acquire every bit of information before she starts a project. She won't apply for a job if she doesn't meet all of the criteria in the posting, and she might be hesitant to speak up in a meeting or ask a question at an event because she'll be afraid of looking stupid if she doesn't already know the answer. So score that one. How are you doing with that? The natural genius is able, and as a consequence, she'll be used to acquiring skills easily. But when she has to work hard or encounter struggles, then her brain will tell her that this is just proof that she's not really good enough, and therefore is an imposter. She's not able to do it, so she shouldn't really be there. The soloist is another personality trait. The soloist feels that she has to accomplish tasks on her own, and if she needs to ask for help, then this proves she is a failure or a fraud. And then the superwoman will push herself to work harder than those around her just to prove that she's not an imposter. She'll feel the pressure to succeed in all aspects of life, in health and fitness at work, as a mother, as a wife, as a girlfriend, and so on. And she may feel stressed when she's not accomplishing it all. So all of those traits, many of us, many of you, they're going to be really familiar to you. And you might have heard me say those and kind of go, oh gosh, I'm a little bit like that. I'm a little bit like that. It's like, what's going on? So with all of those, please don't judge. Don't judge yourself for wherever you are. Just accept it and stay with me and keep listening. Interestingly, Forrester predicted this year that in 2022, this year, 1 in 10 experienced cybersecurity professionals will exit the industry. And the reason that is going to happen is because of a few dynamics colliding, namely poor financial and advancement incentives, general stress and burnout impacting security teams, and cybersecurity's dirty little secret, toxic workplace toxicity. It's really hard to say that. So what is burnout? Well, burnout is a syndrome. The World Health Organization has defined it as this. So It's a syndrome, and it comes from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And I just want to point out, I'm not an expert in burnout at all. So that's my little caveat there. So much of this has been done from research, and also it comes from personal experience. It comes from hearing stories, and also my lived experience as well. You know, in cybersecurity, being close to burnout, and maybe at periods of time suffering from burnout. So think about how it feels when you are showing up to work and you are just feeling your best. You're going to feel energized, you're going to feel focused, you're going to feel extremely fulfilled, you're going to feel confident, successful, effective, mentally capable, valued, and also alive. It feels really, really good, and you can't wait to go to work and do your best work when it feels like that. When you're burning out, though, this is typically what it feels like. It feels like you've got hardly any energy at all, like you're depleted, you're exhausted. Maybe you don't want to get out of bed. It's a struggle. It requires so much energy. You might be a little bit more negative and a bit more distant. You might be more critical than normal. And you also might have reduced professional efficacy as well. So all of those things can occur. Now, when it comes to stress and pressure, a good amount is what's needed. So you can see here, I'm just going to move not my slide, but my Zoom bit. You can see here that there is an optimal place for stress and pressure. And when that happens, then you are going to be in that high challenge, high support environment. You're going to be experiencing all of that. So you'll be stretched and you'll be supported in equal doses. And that's when you're going to be able to do your best work. You're going to be able to learn really well. You're going to go to work really motivated and inspired, and you're going to be inspiring and motivating others as well. It's just going to be really, really, it's going to be an environment full of joy and fulfillment, mostly. And when it's too much, you're going to be in this bit here, the high challenge and low support. And that's where your performance is going to deteriorate, and it won't feel good, and it will feel like a struggle, and you'll feel inadequate, and you'll start to question yourself. Should I be here? Am I capable? And so on. And it's horrible when that happens, and it happens so often. I can't keep up here. This place isn't for me. This industry isn't for me. I'm no good. And all of that back chat, that horrible talk, self-talk that you invariably are going to do to yourself. Now, when it comes to burnout, about 2/3 of full-time workers experience burnout on the job. So that quote comes from Gallup. But when we look at cybersecurity, then this is what's happening. You've got 84% of people in cybersecurity who are suffering burnout, and 51% of those are suffering extreme burnout. So I think that first stat came from the Access report that was done by 1Password. I'm not sure where that 51% stat came from, because it's not been attributed. But what we do know is that it is not great, and more of us are experiencing burnout, and our work isn't as high quality as it could be. Now, here are the effects of burnout on a personal level. You can be thriving. So when you're thriving, everything is all good. You're doing your best work, high quality, everyone's happy. And then you can move from that, when you're entering that burnout zone, into this place where you need help. And then if you don't ask for help, or if there isn't an intervention, or if nobody spots it, then it can lead to something called presenteeism. And that's really where you show up to work and you're present, but you're not really there. So you can be showing up for the team meetings, you can be doing work, but it's going to be of a lower quality, and literally you are just turning up. And as somebody described it to me, it's almost like when you're at school or you're at college and you show up and you're on the register, but that's about it. It can also lead to you being absent, so you being more sick than normal, you taking more time off work. It can lead to long-term sickness, so something called absenteeism, and it can also lead to you leaving. So you can leave from repeated absences and from absenteeism, or simply because actually you go, this isn't for me, I'm no good, I can't cope, I'm a failure, I don't belong here, and I'm going to leave. There's something better for me elsewhere, and that could be a different industry, or it could be a different company. Or of course, you could be let go of, because your boss could say, your line manager or your lead could be saying, you know, you're not working out, you're not doing your best work, there's been a deterioration, the quality of your work has slipped, and so on. So you could be let go of. From a company perspective, here's what is happening. So when we look at this problem globally, the cost is really significant. The impact is as follows. When you've got workers who are absent, employees who are absent, then it's costing companies globally about 150 billion US dollars. Presenteeism is costing 10 times that amount, so 1,500 billion. And then leavers, when it comes to leavers, that can cost a company anywhere from 6 months' salary to 2 years' salary. It really just does depend on your level. And then, of course, what's happening with all of this is the impact is greater because our attackers can make use of this, and they are doing that. So they're leaning into our behaviors and what's going on. So there's higher risk as a consequence, because what they're doing is they're making use of us being maybe a bit slower, a bit more tired during the afternoon period or other busy periods. So that is not great at all. However, when it comes to all of this, and certainly from a leader perspective or a company perspective, you can change this. You can, if you make the interventions early. So during that thriving phase, if you put in place interventions, so you're really supporting your team, and you're getting the best out of them, you've maybe got some training in there as well, and you've got these high challenge, high support cultures, then you can deliver a return on your investment 8.4 times. I think this came from Deloitte, this stat. If you do it and you're proactive when your team members need help, then the return on investment can be 6 times. And then from an absent perspective, which is far more reactive, and you really don't want to be doing it at this stage because it's so much more risky, then you can still have a return on your investment 0.4 to 5.1%. So it's quite a big variation in terms of that percentage there, but you still can do it if your team members are becoming more absent. So why does this happen? Well, typically it happens because of our personality types, and I ran through a few traits earlier. But if we look at the typical personalities that most of us are familiar with, this type A personality or type B personality, the term was coined, I think, in the 1950s by a couple of cardiologists. Can't remember the names now, but because it's just gone from me. But they coined this phrase. And a type A personality is someone who is typically competitive, ambitious, goal-driven, organized. They dislike wasting time. They feel impatient, or maybe they get irritated when they're being delayed, and they spend much time focused on work. It's their whole life. I'm definitely, like, hands up, guilty as charged for being a type A personality. I recognize that. And again, like with all of these things, don't judge yourself. Just be aware of like what your personality is, the tendency for your personality types and traits. Type B personality is much more easygoing, much more relaxed, highly flexible. They generally take a much more carefree approach to work. They have much more work-life balance, and they are much less stressed. And then, of course, it doesn't always have to be because of your personality types. It can be any of these things. You could have pressure to work extra hard because of your family or loved ones. Maybe something has happened, you've got yourself into trouble with money or debt, or maybe you're saving up for something, or maybe you've got to pay something off. Whatever the case, it could be because of that. So you're feeling that you need to work extra hard, and so on. You might have a type A boss who's driving you. They might be completely not aware. They've got their issues, and they're driven for various reasons. It could be because you're using these work ways to avoid something. It could be an environment at home. It could be because you're addicted to work and you don't even realize it. Again, don't judge. This is just kind of where you are. It could be learned behavior. This has always been the case at home. Maybe you got love from a parent when you worked really hard, or you did well at school, and you got good grades, and all of those things. So it can be expected behavior, and it can also be down to you and your self-worth. So all of those reasons can be why you might be working harder than necessary or for longer than necessary. And then, of course, what can happen is, might not be any of those. It could be actually because of the situation. So right now, what we have in cybersecurity is we have an acute lack of resources. I mentioned that earlier. We have, on the whole, small teams. And if we have a situation because of COVID, where a lot of people resigned, they called it the Great Resignation, we might be struggling more than before to actually get people to come and work in our companies. So right now, what they're saying in cyber is that more than 60% of companies are reporting having unfilled cybersecurity positions. And so if this is continuing, and it's been like this for a long time, then we're just going to have more of our teams having to do more of the work. So it's just like, well, can you just take that on, because we don't have someone here, we are recruiting, it's not going to last for long. And if that does last for long, then all it means is you're working at a higher rate. And it could be that you're missing things. It might be that you're not able to do those critical tasks. It might be that you can't do those system configurations, or you can't do those risk assessments. You can't patch software because too much work is coming your way. You're being asked to do too much, and it's just simply not possible. So tasks go uncompleted because you're busy responding to higher priorities. So it could be the incident response coming in, and you're having to deal with those. So something's got to give. It's very difficult. Those stats come from the State of Cybersecurity 2022, ISACA. So what can you do when it comes to burnout? Well, as a leader, you can make sure that you are building these high challenge, high support cultures, these environments of psychological safety. You can be looking at the meetings. So how many meetings are going on with your team members? If you've got a small team, then it's going to be so much easier for you. But what is going on? Do the team really need to come to all of these meetings? Do you need to hold as many meetings as you do? How many meetings are being double booked? What about the extent of email? Are you CCing all of the time? Is that really necessary? What about absences? What's going on there? What about overtime? How many people are working overtime? What about your attrition levels? What about this quiet quitting? It's a new buzzword where, it's been going on for years, where more and more people are being asked to take on extra jobs. And typically because of how we are as women, we can be given more. of these things. So quiet quitting is when you'll say no. I'm not going to take that on board because I've got too much on. But that's still going on. And then we have this productivity paranoia. Again, another buzzword. It's come from Microsoft. And they did a bit of research recently whereby they found a real discord between employees employees who believed they were highly productive, and also the CEOs of companies. So it's quite a substantial bit of research. And what they found was that employees believed that they were being highly productive 85% of the time, compared to CEOs who thought that they were being productive only 12% of the time. So a really big discord there. Now, what was transpiring was that they were being really busy. So they were attending a lot of meetings, and often they were double booked for meetings. But it's just like, when there is so much distraction coming at you, it's really hard to know where to place yourself. Well, what happens if I don't attend that meeting? Am I going to be judged negatively? Am I being judged negatively? Can I say no? All of those things. So all of that is going on. And then you can be putting in wellness policies. You can be making sure that they're there, making sure that your team are aware of them if they are there. You can be putting in support groups. You can be putting in training, awareness. You can be role modeling good behavior. And you can become really better aware of stress, of burnout, and also of changing hormones. Because again, some of these things can be, like hormones, can be attributed to perimenopause or menopause as opposed to burnout. So it's just like having a better awareness of what is going on, human behavior and things like that. So what is going on in your team, and becoming really vigilant, becoming really aware of it. For you personally, it's really, again, pretty similar. It's instilling healthy habits. So making sure that you're getting between 7 to 8 hours worth of sleep. And I know if you're a mom, and I was going to say a new mom, but sometimes I'm a mom of 3, and sometimes babies don't sleep for quite a long time. So your sleep can be disturbed. Or maybe even if you don't have sleep, maybe you've got a pet. See, I've got an old dog, and she's keeping me awake at night because she needs to get up in the middle of the night. So my sleep is disturbed. But if you can, get a good 7 to 8 hours worth of sleep, get good nutrition, make sure you're not filling your body with junk food, drink lots of water, keep your caffeine low, exercise, do these things regularly. Mindfulness is really good. Yoga is good. Pray, journaling, create those healthy habits. Have a vision, know why you do what you do, what a good environment looks like. How do you want to work? What do you want out of your life? How hard do you want to work? What's that work-life balance? What does it look like? Say no more often. I'm sure I'm going to be talking about this with Reem in a few minutes. But say no more often. Ask for help more often. Don't feel ashamed or worthless if you do need help, or any of those things. Do not judge yourself. Don't wait for permission. Listen to your intuition. Listen to what your body is telling you, because your body will tell you when it is not coping. Be kinder to yourself. Make sure that you are getting in some me time. That's what my daughter calls it. It's really important. Get a mentor, get an accountability buddy if it helps you to do these things. Go and see a therapist if you're struggling, or you recognize some traits that you need help with. Go and see a doctor if it's really bad, and understand your body as a woman. So really understand what's going on from a hormone perspective, whether you've just had a baby or whether you're going into that perimenopause or menopause stage of your life. And if necessary, manage your lead, manage your line manager, make it easier on them. And what I have to get this in, because I thought I'm just going to be really cheeky, but this is, you can't see it actually now, but it's called In Focus. And it's happened as a bit of an accident, but I've created this really useful journal that will help you to track these things, and it will really support you or your team in making sure that you are putting in these healthy habits, that you you do understand your why, you can see your progress, and you can track your behavior, and you can see improvements, or you can see where you need to make those improvements. So that is coming soon for you. And this is how to get in contact with me if you don't know how to do that. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, you can drop me an email, and pretty much on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, you can find me as Jane Frankland. So I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, it's back in progress.
Wow.
So
Wow, Jane. While you're talking, it just feels so overwhelming when you, as you say, personality. Yes, guilty. You know, and I was wearing. I did that. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. But every line, every statement, I was just reflecting, resonating, experiencing those moments. Being the first female CISO in the energy sector in the region was overwhelming for a female lady in a male dominant industry. And all of these burnouts, we have been through it over and over and over again. Having and listening to this, because the ones who are being experiencing all of that, Jane, are the one who really feels the pain and said, we need this one in our WiCSME conference. And that's why we shed light on that, because I experienced this. You as a leader has been thriving, you've experienced that. It's not easy.
It absolutely. I mean, it's so true, Reem. I mean, and it's just like, as I was doing it, it's just like, oh, crikey, you know, it's like I'm like sticking my hand up going, I need to get this in check. And it's so easy to like do this and talk about it and say you should be like this and you should be like that, and it's really hard to actually do. It's so difficult. And if you don't have someone watching out for you, it could be a family member, it could be a loved one, but sometimes many of us don't have that, and we have to be quite self-reliant. And it's so easy, especially when you care about your work, and you're dedicated to it and you really want to make an impact. It's so easy just to keep on going and to not recognize it, and particularly when you've been brought up in that way, and then on top of it, you know, you're being judged, you know, you feel that pressure as a woman. It's just like, I can't say no, or I've just started a new job and I can't say no, or I'm new to this industry and I can't say no, it's my first job. How do I push back and things like that? You know, when you might be having so much, so many things to learn, and you might not be coping because you can be overwhelmed. You know, coming back to right at the very beginning with Alvin Toffler, you know, talking about overwhelm and this stress that goes on because there's so much information coming at you. It's just information overload. And when we've got people who have been in the industry for so long, or they know how something works at a company, it's just like expected. They forget just the amount of brain power, that system two thinking that is needed to learn things.
Exactly. And as you said, for those leaders who have been there so long, and hats up for you for being there and surviving for 25 years. I'm here with 23 years, so I know how does that mean. And you have seen, and you kept repeating that. Don't judge. Don't judge. We are always hard on ourselves, Jane. And sometimes even we don't know we're in a burnout, what is the best way we can just pull ourselves out from there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like, yeah. And I think that's where having a mentor can help. But equally, the other thing I want to say is having a mentor, if it's not the right mentor, can be really difficult, because often what I hear from women leaders is that, yeah, you have to work really hard and you've just got to suck it up. And so it can be a case of, well, you're just telling me I've got to do this, and you're not hearing me, or you're not aware, just like the toll that it's taking on me, my body, my family, or any of that stuff, my mental health. And so it can be hard because we've got these mixed messages that go on. We have to work really hard, and you have to work in this way, this production paranoia that is going on. It's just like work, 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 and this expectation that you are a machine, and we're not a machine. We break. We're human beings, and we don't live to work. We live to live and have a full experience, and we're in this game for the marathon, not for a sprint. And companies can sometimes be quite abusive with that, because they can just replace you. It's just like, okay, next. Yeah, we'll work them to the bone. And then it's just like, next, we'll just replace them. Some companies have that strategy, or they wear it, or they're not, they're not penalized. They can be incentivized on getting women in the industry, but not for losing them.
Let us just focus on this point exactly. When you said that there is an understanding that we can replace them, when you have shed light on the return on investment and on the huge cost, the hidden cost actually of getting burnout, these leaders, these management are somehow missing the whole picture, that if that person is burnout and he has that right footing to cover that with the current huge shortage and acute shortage of skills, will be their struggle. It's their, it's their agony actually eventually. So they should be looking at the bigger picture. And with you highlighting the ROI and all of that, has just told them much more than just replacing humans.
I mean, this is it. I mean, it's just like if you achieve, like if you really hone your leadership skills, then it's not just a case of you're reducing burnout. Everything improves. Everything improves. You get top talent. You keep your top talent for longer. Like, word gets around. You do a better job. You make better decisions because you've got this amazing team. They're making better decisions. So everything, the quality rises. So everything comes back to this leadership. So definitely for any leaders like listening in, it's like, learn the high challenge, high support model. And it's like most things, you need to do the basics well. It's not anything like crazy or anything like that. It really is like, do the basics well, and really get to know your team and what they need and what support they need, and challenge them and listen to them and care about them, and be interested and invested in them, and you'll get that back. It's not difficult stuff at all, and there is a process for it, but it's not difficult. It really isn't. And then everything improves.
All of these skills and traits that you have just mentioned, Jane, is a part of being empathetic leader. And in cybersecurity, you do need to be empathetic leader. You need to manage that burnout. When you mentioned the great resignation during the COVID, I'm being blessed that being empathetic leader actually made me look beyond just handling the COVID and the cybersecurity training and challenges, and tapped on calling them in person. How are you doing?
Yes,
good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's a really good point as well, because so often what I see is there might be an email sent out or a message. Sometimes we've got some lovely people on LinkedIn who will be doing this, and they'll be like tagging people and everything like that. Well, let's face it, who is actually going to go, oh, I'm struggling here? No one's going to do that. So unless you call them, unless you see them, you're not going to get an idea as to how well they're coping. And also, I really want to just let you know about this. So, that I believe women see risk in a different way to men, and there have been countless hundreds of studies that show this. Well, interestingly, I was looking at something else from the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum, they measure risk, and they measure the difference between genders as well. But also they measure, but it's not burnout, stress. I can't remember the name, the term they give it. It's either burnout or stress. What's really interesting is that women and men see those in a different light. So it's just like, well, what is happening? And I'm not saying that men are right or women are right. It's just like you've got two genders that are being tracked, and there is actually quite a difference in what is going on there. So it's interesting to note, I think, when that is being measured.
And it's a healthy difference where they complement each other rather than being, against each other. It's actually a different perspective,
Yeah.
introduce more diversity, introduce more understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, I don't know who's right and who's wrong, which was interesting. If only we had that. It's just like, well, how out are they?
Yeah,
In
exactly.
terms of the two genders. But it's just like when we've got more diversity in our teams, then we're just going to be making better decisions as opposed to being, out on the decisions. So the quality will improve.
If I can only freeze time and endlessly ask you many questions, because this is just a topic that we all will be relating, will be reflecting, and I know that it will resonate with everyone,
Yeah,
not only females. It will be even resonating with our male audience as well. I know that putting ourselves in the shoes of these passionate information security officers, and I can even look at the sparkles of Fatma's now eyes, of where she is now struggling between delivering highly in her career, trying to give her passionate startup where she has innovative ideas in the startup, but she doesn't have the time, and then attaining her family. And in our Middle East we have very strong bonds when it comes to the family, and then doing the community work, which she's leading our speakers conference team. How can she avoid falling the trap of burnout? So, other Fatmas, other ladies like that passion, and other warriors, cyber warriors with the same passion, how could they just avoid falling there?
It's really being aware of this. So it's listening to your body, like doing a bit of a stock take. How much are you taking on? How are you feeling? How much time is left for yourself, like for you, for your family, friends, like mixing all of that. What's left? And also with some things, it's a consideration in terms of how long has this been going on. So if it's been continuing for a long time, then you're increasing your chances of burning out. It could just be a case of, well, this is a short but sweet stint at having to do an awful lot. It's just like, wow, say, knowing in Fatima's instance, but if an incident happens, it's just like, wow, all hands on deck, like we're doing this, and that's just what's got to be done. Coming back to Fatima, it really is being aware of this. And then also you can also check in with other people as well, because they may notice that you're not as available for them to go out and so on as maybe you were before. So mentoring can help, having a good accountability buddy, family members, asking them and listening to yourself and doing that stock take. What am I doing? Yeah.
It makes lots of sense, and I know, Fatma, you're listening to that, so get that into action. Knowing that you are the founder of the source, how relating to an ecosystem, a support group, a safe place of women can really also help us in this avoiding this burnout or even recovery from a burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely it can. And like I said, us supporting one another, so helping one another, no judgment, no shame, no blame, not on anyone. It's just like, let's get that off the table. But certainly when we talk about these things, it really helps us to feel more normal. It's just like, oh, I didn't realize you were having that problem too. So if you go back to that self-fulfilling prophecy, like with the young woman where she thinks that she's not coping, she's got so much work to do, she's working all hours all through the week and at weekends, and her boss is just going, wow, you're doing amazingly, let me give you more, you're really like a high performer. And all the time she's thinking, oh, no one else is struggling with this, it's me, I'm a failure. But actually when we talk more to one another, then we can realize, oh, and this isn't just a case of necessarily gender.
Yes.
it can just be a human thing. Me too. I'm struggling too.
Yeah.
But the only thing I say with women is we have more of a tendency to struggle alone. There's at times, I know men can do that as well. They can really struggle, and that's one of the reasons why suicide is higher for men up to, I think, I don't know if it's like mid-40s or something like that, but they can struggle too. But the more that we come together, and particularly like support one another as women, and let one another know, this is happening, I feel like this is going on, like, help me, you know, the less alone we feel, the more able we're able to cope, the more able we are to go and get help.
This is just, you know, emphasize that my best life motto, which is stronger together, where we've always built on our, you know, strength together, with trying to wrap it up and knowing that we're not angels and we're not machines at the same time. But what we're trying here, Jane, all of us, you yourself, myself, all our audience here, that we're trying our best to become a better versions of ourselves every day. Okay, the following day. So we might fall into burnout even after that session, but that's okay as long as we are aware of that. So how can we just let them know that they are humans? They might fall in that, but that's okay. So I would love to have a wrap up from you in that aspect.
Absolutely, and you make a really good point, because we're learning all the time. Yeah. So if we don't have that reference point, you know, sometimes we have to burn out, and hopefully we won't become really sick from it. But like knowing something, yes, like, is not the same as doing it. We can know all of these things, and it's like, yeah, I know that, and just ignore it. It's often when something happens, we get that message. It's like, oh, now I understand what this is, or like, oh gosh, that was a bit of a wake-up call, you know. So sometimes we need to learn from experience and have that reference point there. So again, like, it's so valid what you said. It's because knowing and doing is not the same thing. We might have to actually become burnt out in order to really understand that message.
Very, very much resonating. And I believe, as you said, being aware, you know, knowing that, not judging, not shaming each other, having the support group. WiCSME is there for all our ladies within the Middle East, and with you, with us, and other global women leaders supporting, and all of us being together, we will be always stronger. We will be always more, you know, able to thrive and able to survive more and inspire, like you always inspire us all the way. Thank you so much, Adrian. You're an amazing legend and icon and role model to all of us in cybersecurity, whether as a leader or as a mom or as a friend. We're so blessed to have in our role, Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for being part of our WiCSME.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.